sounds good and it sounds like a great idea, but trying to be all things to all people all the time is not a good idea. I would say one early piece of advice would be to define your niche early.
Hey, agency owners. In this episode, I sit down with my longtime friend, Lisa Sabin-Wilson, a name that's been synonymous with WordPress for nearly 2 decades. She's the prolific author behind WordPress for Dummies and over 20 other books. A trailblazing agency founder, the former COO and co-owner of WebDevStudios, an enterprise agency still doing amazing work with some of the most recognizable brands on the planet. Lisa's story is one of bold career leaps, strategic partnerships, and a deep commitment to both craft and people. So from her early days as a nurse to stumbling into building blogging, to building an agency, and then even bigger partnering with WebDevStudios and Brad Williams to WebDevStudios, to now returning to her roots to healthcare leadership. Lisa brings this rare perspective on growth and reinvention, leading with empathy. I love this interview. We talk about how she stumbled into tech, the lessons she learned scaling an agency in WordPress during those wild, wild west years that I remember vividly too, and what it takes to pick the right niche and thrive, and the skills of being a leader and a people leader and manager. And so whether you're an agency owner thinking about your next chapter or simply a story about charting your own course, you're going to take a lot of inspiration like I did and maybe some courage from Lisa's journey. Here's Lisa Sabin-Wilson. Hey, everybody. I'm talking to my friend, Lisa Sabin-Wilson, formerly of WebDevStudios, formerly of a bunch of different things, but we've been friends for, Lisa, I want to say 2010, 2009. WordCamp Chicago, we got to meet, but I wanted to ask you, you're in a transition period here, doing some cool stuff, but you have so much to offer in your experiences. You've done that over your career, particularly in WordPress, particularly in agency work. I said book empire, like For Dummies series. I love going in bookstores, still seeing your book, but thank you for being on the hosting.com show for agency owners, agency success. And could you tell us a little bit about yourself? And I'm going to ask some questions about these things I already know about you.
Well, thanks, Corey. It's always good to talk to you, and I really appreciate your reaching out and giving me the opportunity to kind of tell my story and what's going on right now. So, formerly of WebDevStudios sounds really weird to me because 15 years I was with WebDevStudios. And that's just a lifetime. That's a full-fledged career there. But I started in tech in WordPress in 2005. So I kind of came into tech as somebody who liked to solve problems, liked to build things, liked to solve puzzles and really kind of create solutions and help people get real value out of the web. So the way that I explain what I used to do to people now is that I kind of grew up as the internet was becoming more and more valuable to businesses on the web. So really helping people get value out of it was really a passion, and it grew really fast. So, back then I didn't expect my agency, eWebscapes, which was my first agency. And then that merged into WebDevStudios. Like I didn't expect it when I left my nursing career to fulfill an almost 20-year career full of traveling the world, really, public speaking everywhere, writing 20 plus books for Wiley Publishing, and building an agency with really talented people that Fortune 500 companies trusted us to, build solutions for them. But yeah, there it was. I led engineering, I led operations, project management, and strategy. And now in October, my business partner at the time, Brad Williams, and may be familiar with him, I know that you are, approached me and, wanted to know if I would be interested in selling him my half of the company. I owned 50% of it. And I think that at the time, I was ready to move on, but I just didn't quite know it yet. And I think that was the impetus for me to really sit back and go, you know what? Yeah, I think I want to do something else. I think I really do. And so here I am now. I'm formerly with WebDevStudios. The deal was done in May of this year, and I'm living a completely different life.
We're going to talk all about this in this conversation today, and there's so many. We could spend hours just going down one line of this. You've had 20-year career in WordPress and web design, in agency work and publishing. There's a lot here, and that's why I wanted to get you on, because I think at this moment, as you left companies you owned and all of this amazing career, you're starting new ones. And I know our agency owners that are talking about what's next for them want to hear part of that you're thinking too. And so what I wanted to start on, though, was really like the agency work. 2005, I know from your story, you were a nurse back then, stumbled into web design, doing that. Could you tell us that story about how you even get started? And then we'll talk a little bit about the agency work, which I like to brag on all my friends like you that do all this good work for all the name brands that we all know and love. It's an incredible story, but how did you get started in 2005 with that first website and the projects, and how did that build?
I mean, you nailed it. I stumbled right into it. I think like so many of us did at that time. It was just kind of the wild, wild west for us, for theme developers, for web designers, for plugin developers. I started out by just blogging. And I don't even know, to be honest with you, how I stumbled upon blogging. And I think it was my interest in politics at the time. So I was big into like polyblogging, blogging my opinion, throwing it out there on the internet, like so many of us were doing with blogs. And I worked with Movable Type, if anybody remembers that platform. And I started out by just wanting, I'm that old, sorry. Movable Type. So I started out by like wanting to make my website look nice. So I taught myself graphic design. I taught myself CSS. I learned HTML, all of those things to kind of create these templates for Movable Type. Then Movable Type did its thing with the licensing. It lost a bunch of users, including myself. I moved to WordPress in 2003, and wow, that move alone was really the catalyst for everything, because I started to learn how to create themes for WordPress at the time. People who were in sort of my blogging community of politics were like, how did you do that? How do you make your blog look like that? I want that. I want something personal. I want something customized. I want this. I want that. So I started doing blog themes for people, $75 but I would do your blog for you for $75. And I was working as a nurse at the same time. So I was kind of doing this dual career at the same time, working as a nurse during the day, working as a blog designer, web designer by night. And I think that when my income for doing designs exceeded my income for nursing consistently, then it was like, I should really try and make the leap into self-employment. It's not something I had ever considered before, but my kids were young. The opportunity to stay at home and to not work these crazy hours that they have nurses. I don't know if you know anything about shift work with nurses, but you're working at 6 o'clock in the morning until 6 o'clock at night. And sometimes you have to stay longer because the need is there. Human beings in hospitals need a lot of things. So it was a demanding job, and my kids were young, and it was just kind of a no-brainer to say, I'm going to try this. I'm going to ride this for as long as I can and take the opportunity to be home with my kids. And wow, 20 years later, here I am. But I mean, that's kind of I skipped a lot in between there. 2003 is when I started. 2005 is when I quit nursing. 2006, I got the book deal at South by Southwest. I was asked to speak at South by Southwest in Austin in 2006. It was the first time WordPress showed up on a stage at South by Southwest. And there was a editor from Wiley Publishing in the audience who came up to me afterwards and was like, "Hey, did you ever consider writing a book about WordPress?" I'm like, "Sign me up. Yeah, I'm willing. I'm ready. Let's do it." And
so what was your talk at South by Southwest?
How to make money with your blog design skills. It was a panel Yeah, it was a panel, and there were people on it that represented Expression Engine, movable typepad, Blogger, and WordPress, and I was the WordPress person on the panel.
Gosh, you just said typepad, and that is one I haven't heard in a long time too, but I remember that. But these were all the dominant kind of blogging slash CMSs out there, and obviously WordPress took off. But you know,
Yeah,
what always one stumbling into things, but I think the other is you initiative, self-starting, walking through those doors and showing up, and it turned out really, really fantastic. We haven't got to the even the bigger growth story of the agency work, but I actually didn't know that. Knowing you this long, I didn't know you started out as a polyblogger and then how you got the deal.
yeah, that's exactly how I got it. And it was an interesting path to walk, and not something that I planned or necessarily wanted to do or expected, but you know, things were a little crazy in the internet back then, right? There were so many opportunities all over the place. You just grab onto one and hold on for dear life, which is what I did.
And you did. So that leads to, okay, eWebScates is starting to build and grow. And, then eventually you partner with Brad at WebDevStudios. You guys merged. He's also an author too, had been doing agency work for a long time. But so eWebScates is building during this time, and you're getting more and more work. Did you say 2005 when eWebScates started?
Yeah, I mean, I started eWebscapes in 2004, and I quit nursing in 2005. So that's when things really took off. Really was in 2005, 2006, and then the book deal came along, and things just flew at that point. Once the first book was released, um, that was it. I could not keep up. It was just trying to uh, keep my head above water the entire time. And then probably around the time that I met you, so you and I met in 2009. I was a organizer of WordCamp Chicago, the first WordCamp Chicago ever in 2009. So I did 2009, 2010. So you and I met 2009. You helped me carry all the swag and stuff upstairs because it was 3 floors up, and it was great. It's the first time I met you, and it's been a solid friendship ever since. Like ever since. You've just
Wow.
been you've just been there along with me, and I've been sharing your journey as well. It's been great. But I think it was around 2010 to 2011, things were getting pretty hairy with eWebscape. Like I can't keep up. Um, the exciting thing about it was corporations, Fortune 500s, were starting to discover that they could save a lot of money on their bottom line with their digital presence by using WordPress. So they were seeking out WordPress experts. And of course, because my name was attached to the book, it was just a natural, Lisa, can you help us? Lisa, what are you doing? Like who can you get to help us? Are you able to help us? So it was a decision on whether I needed to hire and grow an entire agency myself, or outsource, or merge with another company. So WebDevStudios was known at the time as a heavy like development focus, not necessarily design focus, but development focused company. I'm a designer, so I'm a graphic designer and a front end developer. I don't necessarily dabble too much in back end, although now I can, but back then I didn't. So I used to outsource to Brad at WebDevStudios for things that were over my head, outside of my wheelhouse, beyond my scope, whatever you want to call it. Um, and then one time at, what word camp was it?
It was Pressnomics, actually.
It actually might have been Chicago. The same year, though. It was the year that WordPress did the summit in Tybee Islands that we all went to. So it was right before then that I approached Brad and said, I need help. I don't know what that looks like, but I can't keep doing this at this pace and at this level because I'm burning myself out. My family doesn't see me. You've heard these stories from everybody. It's the same. Um, what do you think things would look like if we took my design and front end capabilities and what I'm known for and merged it with your back end capabilities and created a full service agency focused on WordPress? Um, it, it doesn't sound so crazy now, but it sounded crazy back then and it felt crazy, but we did it. We took a look at the work that they were doing and the work that I was doing and decided it was a good blend of talent and a good blend of clients. Brett and I had a very similar approach. We're very similar people. Um, at least we were back then. And it worked. It worked really well. So it was a good move.
When you look back after the merger and you all combining forces and bringing two huge brands, personal brands with both of you, and your company brands in because you were prolific authors, are prolific authors, I should say. Um, what are some of the things you're most proud of as COO and partner at WebDev, kind of looking back? Because at the height, I know you led a very big team doing very, very big work for the brands. Again, I don't know how much we can talk about it, but how the brands that people probably go up to coffee for every day, and other ones that they use some way in their house. They probably own things from those companies. What are you most proud of that overall agency experience?
So many things, literally so many things. Like, I mean, you could go to webdevstudios.com and look at the portfolio now, and some of the companies that you're talking about are very well known household brands. The coffee you talked about, we did work for Starbucks, which was exciting. We did work for Microsoft. We did work for Viacom. We touched properties for VH1 and MTV and Comedy Central. I mean, just the list is pretty phenomenal, and I'm really proud that we were able to build those together. Um, and it wasn't any one thing in particular. It was, I think, Brett and I had that winning combination of the two types of work that we were doing, his back end development, plugin development with my design and front end development, really, and our ability to understand what clients wanted, and our ability to be able to communicate that. And I think that speaks a lot to both Brett and I being authors and being able to write things and communicate things over the internet in a remote environment in ways that resonated with clients. People make fun of the Dummies brand all the time, but when you can take complicated uh, concepts and complicated information and boil it down to language and concepts that people in marketing departments or IT departments that don't necessarily deal with internet work, when you can boil that down in terms that they can understand and they can start to see the vision, that's when it really starts to click and work. So I'm really proud that we were able to really help so many people do that. And it just kills me sometimes that we would approach a contract, and want to win a contract so bad with these huge companies that we knew who they were. And during the sales call, they would say, "I have your book on my desk," or "Brad, I have both your books on my desk," or "We bought your book for our IT department so that they would know how to do development, Brad." Things like that. Um, that was really cool. But I think what I'm most proud of is the teams that we worked with, and really watching the developers, the project managers, the engineers, and the marketers, the salespeople, just really watching them hone their craft too. Because again, going back to um, all of this being so new in the late 90s, early 2000s, by mid 2000, it still felt like the wild, wild west out there. It still felt like we were still making things up as we were going. And so many of the agencies that were out there were doing the same. But watching these individuals hone their craft and seeing where they've grown and how far they've gone, that's a moment of pride as well.
It should be. And I know a lot of these stories, so I'm trying to ask the questions where you get to share them out there too. But I'm curious. Here's one that I know you're going to hit out, but I didn't warn you about is did you discover through this whole journey, 20 years just in one industry, and we're going to talk about you're taking a big leap and a transition into another. What'd you learn about yourself through that 20-year journey?
You could have warned me about this one.
I wanted to get classic Lisa, and I knew,
Yeah.
yeah.
When I was before getting into all of this, I was a nurse on the floor. Um, I was a leader in nurse, so a director of nursing. I ran nursing departments, so I oversaw a lot of employees. So everything that comes along with sort of people management. So this answer might surprise you and surprise people knowing that that's my background. But what I really learned in the 20 years of managing an agency was less about the tech and how to build a website and what looks good and what content works and what SEO matters, less about that and more about dealing with human beings and how human beings work and how different they work. Everybody is so different. And you really have to, as a manager and as a leader of people, you have to bring yourself to where they're at. You can't expect people of different disciplines, of different lifestyles, of different experiences to meet you where you're at all the time. Because I've had a certain trajectory that's not going to match what you've had. But as a manager of people, it's my responsibility to meet you where you're at. And it's all about leading with empathy and understanding that my experiences aren't your experiences and vice versa. So how do you learn best? How do I manage you best? How do you best perform? All of those things that make human beings who they are is probably my biggest lesson and my biggest takeaway from 20 years in running a digital agency. And what's most interesting to me about that is I can take that anywhere. That translates to any industry, anywhere, because managing and leading people, um, that's all the same. Those foundations are the same. So I'm very grateful for being able to sort of hone that craft. So
As you were sharing some of your story, and I can see that, and I'm glad everybody gets to hear that because the technical accomplishments you've done are amazing. The business accomplishments, a book in 20 plus books that are millions of copies floating in the world,
yeah,
very successful agencies at the highest level. And, but then when I started thinking about all the roles you've had and the hats you've worn, an organizer of conferences that are volunteer. So not just leadership of paid people that get a job and benefits, but like organizer, author, the ability to communicate where people would want to buy your book on scale, communication, leader, speaker, leader in the business, leader in the community known as WordPress, speaker. I mean, so all of those things just, and I know a lot of your story, but then be able to lead teams as you all scaled web dev and all that. I think it's, that resonates deeply. I mean, you've done it at every perspective in a door you didn't expect to walk through, but you walked through it well, my friend.
you flatter me, Corey. Really, you do. Thank
It's
you.
all true. It's all true. And well, okay. So as we talk about that, thank you for sharing that. And there's so many more pieces and details to that. But for our
Yeah.
agencies out there listening in, there's highlights, big themes that we can see. But as you kind of look back on your 20-year career as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, as a leader, speaker, organizer, for those agency owners out there sitting there at one stage that you were at 10, 15, 20 years ago, whatever it was, looking back, what pieces of advice, feedback would you share? Maybe for the one starting, maybe for the one that was where you were at eWebScates and goes, listen, I've got to where I need to go far with someone else. Here's a good partner to do that. We're going to do it at scale. So to those two groups, let's start with starters. They're just getting started, what kind of
Yeah,
feedback would you have for them?
that's a great question. And I want to preface this by saying, kind of taking a little bit of a detour and just saying that when I made that transition from freelance agency to merging with WebDev, you were a big part of that. I remember Brad and I met with you for advice and to just kind of bounce things off. So I just want to take that opportunity to say, I appreciate that a lot. That was valuable.
Thank you.
Early, I think, and this is a lesson that I think I learned both at eWebscape and WebDevStudios, but um, it's it it sounds good and it sounds like a great idea, but trying to be all things to all people all the time is not a good idea. That's not a good idea. So I would say one early piece of advice would be to define your niche early, and focus on that, because that type of focus on the niche that you've chosen helps build your reputation. It helps make your message consistent, and it helps really define who you are, either as a solopreneur, as a freelancer, as an employee, as an agency, big or small. That really helps define who you are to your clients. So it eliminates the question of what can I get from you guys? What are you going to do for me? What can you do for me? At WebDevStudios, it was WordPress. We had the opportunity to focus on Drupal, Joomla, at the time, Expression Engine. We could have done a whole bunch of things, and just been an agency that just answered the call. And we did talk about that. Like, some clients don't care what the backbone of their website is. They don't care if it's WordPress or just give me something that works. We don't care. You pick. You're the experts. You pick. But we decided to focus on WordPress, and that's where we focused all of our marketing, all of our SEO, still do. WebDevStudios still does. And we became known as a WordPress agency that will help you build a solution for a relatively decent budget in a timely manner. So we didn't do Drupal, we didn't do Joomla. We turned all of those away because we wanted to focus here. And that's where we wanted our engineering team to focus on. So when you look at things like continuing education and bringing up junior developers into senior developers, the focus for us was WordPress. We didn't scatter, the knowledge across. We didn't expect our team to, know a little bit about everything, but a whole lot about one thing. So that's my first piece of advice for early start.
And that's WordPress. But how along the way did you think because as you left WebDev and what you had done there, where you all ended up on the clients, how did you figure out, okay, even down from that? Because I know WebDev, or at least I think WebDev is an enterprise agency, the Fortune 500 that we're talking about, 100 we're talking about. But how did you get to even step down from that of like, okay, we'll take 50 more, 100 more of those type of clients?
When I ran eWebscape, I did everything, right? So I did WordPress, I did movable type, I did Expression Engine websites, I did Drupal websites, I did TypePad websites and Blogger websites, like templates for Blogger. Holy cow. Like, that's a lot of knowledge to put into one brain and a lot of things to keep track of. So when you start thinking about keeping track of technology, keeping up with technology, and keeping up with the new trends and keeping up with the new software languages and the new versions of this, that, or the other thing. Being in technology, whether you're a business owner or a developer, engineer, whatever, it's like being in school all the time. So you have to have time to do your job. You have to have time to run your business. And then you have to have time to go to school and keep yourself up on what's going on. So selfishly, it's a lot easier to say, I'm just going to focus on one thing and take myself out of the equation for everything else, because that's a lot of investment, and trying to keep up with all this other stuff. But WordPress became a no-brainer because of the trajectory of the project itself. As WordPress gained more and more market share year after year after year after year, it was like, attach yourself to that wagon and you can't go wrong. And we're not the only ones who did that.
Absolutely. Platform expert. They knew you were, by winnowing down those other platforms, you're the expert. And then you all had the books to put down on the desk as the business cards too, which even further,
Yeah.
developed that. Okay.
Yeah.
So one is pick your niche, really niche, pick your niche. And what else would you say? Maybe to the ones that are trying to grow or, at the
Yeah.
point, with e-webscapes, I loved how open you were during those times too. You were like, I'm successful. I'm making money. I'm doing the things I want to do, but I've got a cap. And you were willing to be open to say, I want something new. I want something next. But to those people maybe got to that point, or you did, hit some ceiling that felt frustrated or whatever the feelings were you had, what things would you say to them back then?
Here's a couple of low-hanging fruit, right? Build a network and stay visible. That's super important. And I think most people who are building agency and building businesses right now probably already know that, but it can't be emphasized enough. Build a network of people, keep building it, and stay visible. Relationships drive opportunities, period. End of story. Um, so there's that. Uh, the other thing is like learn the business side of what you're doing. Um, I always said like even as I was walking out the door at WebDevStudios after 15 plus years there, I would always tell people that the reason why I got into this business is because I like to make things pretty on the web. I was a I liked pixels. I liked pushing them around. I hated going to a website and seeing things misaligned and like horrible color choices and like I like making things pretty. That was my passion. I'm creative. And I'd like to be creative. There is nothing creative about responding to an RFP. There's nothing creative about writing up a contract. There's nothing creative about understanding your payroll and how you're going to make that payroll and how you're going to do the financial forecasting and cash flow and all that. But it's necessary. It's a necessary evil. So you either have to learn it yourself or you need to hire really well, smart people around you who do understand those things and can advise you. For so many years, Brad and I understood what we needed to do from that angle as until we didn't. I get if that makes sense. Like until we got to a certain level that it's like we really need this is serious. We're grown up now. So like we really need somebody in here from like a CFO standpoint, for example, providing us not only with financial forecasting and cash flow advice, but then also just financial advice. What do we do with this revenue stream? What do we do with this income? How can we invest it? How can we make this work for us, make our money work for us? Those things that we weren't necessarily thinking about, that I wasn't necessarily thinking about when uh, my motivation was to make the web pretty. Like, I don't care how much it costs. Like, I don't care how we get there. Let's just make it pretty. That's not a good approach, you know? So you do have to stay connected to your passion, which is also something that I emphasized and made sure that I did as COO. I stayed connected to things that allowed me to be creative, because otherwise I would have just burned out. Um, but also really working to understand the business side of things. Um, and then finally, I think investing in strong project management processes from the get-go. I can't emphasize that enough. I'm a big operations person. I'm a big workflow process, spreadsheet, checklists, person because when processes are consistent, they're efficient. And that I believe wholeheartedly in. And the sooner that you can put those things in place, it's much easier to do things right the first time than to try and find time to go back and do it over.
I remember at WebScapes in particular, your project management system, and I was in awe. I was like organizational skills, knowing
Have to.
outcome we're trying to get. And that was early. Like some of the project management software platforms we talk about today didn't exist back then. And you were doing it at a very high level. And I totally see that realization of how to organize, streamline, efficiently do the work, and then care for the humans doing it all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot. That is one thing I brought from my nursing background is those processes for sure. That gave me an edge.
So I was trying to wait for this to the what's next section, but I'm curious, your background in medical, in nursing, in healthcare, and then 20 years in business, how are they alike? What things did you pull from one or the other? Because we're going to talk about what you're doing next now and your decision making thought process as you come down from a business you own to transitioning back, really back into another industry. But I'm just curious, how did your medical healthcare background and career help formulate your agency? You've answered one. I was like, dang it, I was going to ask her that question, but just curious, what things did
Yeah,
you?
so many ways. That's a really good question, and not one that I think is a typical question you would ask most people because not a lot of people have that sort of dual career path. At WebDevStudios, once a year, we would always get together and do our WDS camp. And at our WDS camp, we would do these lightning talks, and everybody would bring to the table a topic that, whether it was related to the work that we did or not. Some people brought a topic of how to make maple syrup, and here's a 5-minute lightning talk on how to do that. And it allowed us to like get to know people outside of lines of code or outside of contracts, things like that. One of the presentations, lightning talks I did was RN to tech, what carried over. And the first bullet point was plugins and pills. Plugins and pills. In WordPress, we always say there's a plugin for that. In healthcare and nursing, there's a pill for that. Like what can we throw down your throat to solve the problem that you're having? Uh, it was just kind of a funny thing, but not really. In terms of tech and nursing and how things align, I go back again to people management. Um, in tech, I was leading teams, building scalable solutions for clients. And now as a nurse, or even then as a nurse, but now I provide direct care, often in high stress, emotional situations, but the leadership skills still apply. But now I lead from the bedside, and now I do patient education instead of client education. It's different information that I'm presenting, but I still have to present it in a way that resonates. And actually the stakes are a lot higher now when I am educating either patients or the people who are taking care of those patients. The stakes are a lot higher now to make sure that I bring clarity to the words that I'm using to try and educate people on things that impact their day-to-day life and health. So those things are valuable. Like my years as a Dummies author, Dummies authoring, and people hate the word dummies like these days. It's just so not politically correct, and I get it. I do, but they have killed the formula. There is a Dummies book for everything. If you don't know how to do something, or even if you want to validate that you know something, grab a Dummies book on that topic, whatever that topic is: real estate, tech, baking chocolate chip cookies, how to build a vegetable garden. It doesn't matter. You find the basics, and it's presented in such a way that anybody can understand it. So that is an extremely valuable lesson that I bring from my tech world into nursing. And from nursing into tech, processes, like processes. In nursing, if it's not documented, it wasn't done. Like it wasn't done. You didn't do it. I don't care if you tell me that you gave that patient 2 Tylenol. No, you didn't. If it's not documented. No, you didn't. In tech, it's the same thing. Like if you don't do what you say that you're going to do for clients in tech, you open yourself up for liability, for lawsuit. There have been times I've been in front of lawyers and in courtrooms that you have to justify what you did for a client, but compared to the contract that they had with you. And if you didn't document that you did something, you don't have it, laid out that he said, she said this and that and proof, then it wasn't done. Because if you can't prove it, it's not done. So those types of concepts are very, switchable back and forth. So
Well, thank you for that. Okay, so you've left web dev, you're on to the career, you're looking back in healthcare. I know that you've been already working in healthcare, getting your foot back in the door, and now you're really going, okay, it's time. I want to return back and bring all this leadership, communication, all the things you've learned over the years, being a business owner, prolific author, leader of others. How's that thought process as you left or transitioning back to another big career field? How has that decision making and mindset gone for you about the what's next for Lisa Sabin-Wilson?
it came together quicker than I thought it was going to. So when Brad approached me in October of last year and said, what do you think about me buying out your part of the company? That decision was like the words left my mouth before I could even like comprehend that I did it, because the words that left my mouth, I think, were immediately yes. So I think, like I said, I think that I was ready, probably more than I realized. And I stepped back operationally because Brad wanted to take WebDevStudios in a way, and he had a vision for what that restructure looked like. And because that restructure didn't involve me, it did involve me. It made sense for me to step back operationally. I was continued to stay on for the time that it took for us to finalize the deal, but I also continued to stay on to help with the transition, with the teams. Happy to do that. So that took from October until May. But because I had stepped back, I found myself with nothing to do for the first time in a lot of years. And that didn't sit well with me. And so I'm like, what am I going to do? Do I want to stay in tech? Do I want to stay in WordPress? I had a few talks with a few companies that you could probably imagine, in the space, and nothing was just really tripping my trigger, and I was talking with my husband, who obviously knows my whole background. And he said, all these years, every other January, you send your $125, whatever it was, to the Wisconsin State Board of Nursing to keep your nursing license active, because it was important to you not to lose touch with that for some reason. And every other year that I did it, there was never, it was always like, I don't know why I'm doing this, like I'm never going to use this again. I'm 10 years out from nursing. I'm 12 years out. I'm 15 years. I'm 20 years out from nursing. I'm never going to do this again. But my husband looked at me and he said, you've done it for a reason. All these years, you didn't let go of it. What do you think about going back into nursing? And immediately, like, that just sparked something in me that I was like, I went out and bought scrubs. I bought a pair of nursing shoes. I bought a clipboard. Like, I'm ready. And I went and Googled like hospitals near me and found that there's, one right down the street. Because funny thing, I've lived in Green Bay for 8 years, but because I work from home, I don't really know Green Bay that well. I know where the primary hospital is, but now I'm looking at it from a nurse's standpoint. What clinics are around? What opportunities exist? And I found that there's a hospital like 5 minutes away from my house. Took a job there on the floor as a floor nurse, and decided that this job would be a good like stepping stone back into nursing to try and transition part-time. I haven't been working full-time. I've only been working part-time for them, to discover like what's changed in nursing over the 20 years that I've been gone. And surprisingly, not much. Like, not much has changed. Like when you put an IV in somebody's arm, the veins are still in the same spot. Like things. The only thing that's really changed is when I left nursing, we were documenting everything on paper with a pen, and now everything is computerized. So I kind of feel like an old dinosaur when I tell these new nurses, back in my day, we got hand cramps documenting all this stuff on paper. You guys had it good. But I decided that this was going to be a transition. and that I was going to work before until I felt confident enough to move into my comfort zone, which is leadership. It's management, leading teams, managing people. I like to be a person who has enough control in a space that gives me the ability to put processes and workflows in place to improve, to change, to make things more efficient. I can't do that as a staff nurse. Now, my boss, they'll say, yes, you can, Lisa. But my response is no, I really can't, because I don't have the title to my name that allows me the ability to make the changes that I feel need to happen. Well, what changes do you think need to happen, Lisa? Well, here's a laundry list of things that I think, we could change immediately. We'll make things more efficient here, make things more, exciting over here, whatever. So my leadership recognizes those things. I've been interviewing. I've crafted a resume that tells the story of my really weird career trajectory. And I think I told you early on when we were talking, like, I wish the jobs in tech for my tech friends and colleagues were as rich and plentiful as they are in healthcare. I have 6 interviews this week. I've turned down twice that many jobs because they didn't meet my needs for whatever reason. I wish the jobs in tech were like this for the people that I know that are struggling right now. But hopefully soon, over the next couple of weeks, I'll have landed something in leadership, and I'll be able to tell you all about it.
That's awesome. I can't wait to hear that too. And we're all rooting for you. But I love there's a thread through this. So start out in nursing. We didn't even talk about healthcare and that start, but then how you can see now in kind of reflection, how much that and your way, how you approached that affected how you led prolifically for the last 20 years in the community and in industry and business to clients. And now you're coming back with all this. You said dinosaur. I go, no. You spent 20 years in software, essentially. You're coming in with all this fresh insight. And I'm sure there's going to be so many ideas and things that come out of this as you come back to a field you're very passionate about. There's a reason you kept that, like Chris said, that $125 a year to the nursing certificate. And
Yeah.
I can't wait to hear about all that goes and what you do and those doors you stumble through next, and make your mark again in another industry that you're coming back to. So anything else
Yeah.
before we wrap up? This has been incredible. Thank you so much for sharing your story, but anything else you want to say about anything?
Um, my years in WordPress, WordPress is kind of going through its own transition phase right now too, which I think is typical for any industry. WordPress has been very special to my heart, to your heart, I know. I wouldn't trade any of it for anything. Like, for anything. I had so much fun building businesses and meeting people like you all across, at least in the United States, some around the world. Like, it's just been such a rich experience and such a unique experience. When I I have made friends in nursing now, because now I go to a physical building and I actually have to, develop relationships with actual human beings in my day-to-day work. I need to give a shout out to Teresa and Frankie, because I know that they're listening. 2 of my nurse friends that I work with on a regular basis. When I talk to them about this, it's a weird world. Like, it doesn't translate. Like, people don't know what WordPress is out in the real world, I guess. They don't know what it is. They don't care how websites get built. They just care that there's a website there to find information on. They don't get as deep or involved into, like, what's WordPress versus what's Webflow. What is, who's Matt Mullenweg? What's WP Engine versus hosting.com? Like, none of this stuff translates. And it just 8 months ago, this was like my world. This is my whole world. And now none of it really, I don't want to say none of it matters, because obviously it matters, but it's just a different focus, and it's really been interesting to step out of it. But man, I wouldn't trade it, not for the world. I'm really proud of my career. I'm proud of my team, the people that I work with and what they're doing now. I'm proud of WebDevStudios. They continue to, chug along out there in the face of a tech industry that has become somewhat volatile right now with AI and just the changes that are happening. So any agency like WebDevStudios that can stay relevant and stay functioning and hang in there, super proud of them. Super proud of them. So
Well, that's awesome. Your values come through like a common thread through all of this, and we'll be watching and rooting you on as you make the kind of impact you've done in WordPress and agency world and a lot of people's lives through this community here. Thank you so much for sharing just parts of your story. This is fragments, everybody, just fragments of things. These are highlights. There's many, many more there, but Lisa, we all wish you the best in what you're doing. And we know you're going to take all of this and apply it in some awesome and innovative and creative way. And
hopefully,
yeah. Well, thank you, Lisa Sabin-Wilson. Thank you, everybody, for listening today. Go back. I hope you've been taking notes. There's so much here that you can go, a real life story at scale in so many different ways to take from and to apply in your agency, in your life. So
thank you, Corey, so much for having me on.
you bet.